Welcome to Sci-Fi Frontier. I'm Dominic, and I'm here with my co-host,
Wally.
And so in this episode, we're going to be doing a response video to the Anti-Trekker and his 3 Star Trek timeline theory. A video he put out a couple weeks ago explaining all the canon violations that are in Trek with all the prequel shows like Discovery and Enterprise. So we just finished watching the video for a second time. So, what are your... So I'll let you go first, Wally. What were your thoughts of this theory? What do you think of it?
Theory seems very sound to me. I mean, it's good up to this point, but what's going to happen in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, with the new Picard series that's coming out in January, you know, what timeline are they going to follow? Yes, it's Jean-Luc Picard that we all know from Star Trek The Next Generation. Yes, we should see this in the prime timeline, per se, but, you know, what's going to happen over the course of this series that's going to affect the other 2 tangent timelines, for lack of a better term. Now, the Anti-Trekker has obviously done a lot of work to go back, find all of these instances to help, you know, solidify his theory here. But I mean, if you really had to get into it, you'd have to rewatch every episode, starting from the original series, and take into consideration every episode that they went back in time.
Yeah, that's the thing. Wouldn't every time they go back in time, wouldn't that create an alternate timeline?
Yeah, like wouldn't something that they do back then create a new tangent?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talked about this off the recording here before we started, and I brought up the point where in The Next Generation, when Data was sent back to I can't remember what century it was, the 18th century or something, when Mark Twain was still around. And the whole episode where he ends up getting blown up and his head is separated from his body and his head remains underneath Starfleet Academy for, you know, hundreds of years. Yeah. And then, you know, they got his headless body on the Enterprise, find his old head that's been sitting underground for, you know, for however many hundreds of years, put them back together, and it's just like he never missed a beat. But his head is now a couple hundred years older than his body. So I mean, it's like, there's got to be a tangent that is created from that somewhere.
Yeah.
So, but what would it be? Like, that's just one example. Now, I've tried, again, we've talked about this on other Star Trek related shows that we've done. I just can't watch the original series as hard as I try. I keep telling myself I'm going to go back and rewatch it. I just can't. I don't know why. I keep trying. I just can't finish it. But yeah, there's definitely going to be stuff in there that, you know, is going to affect more so of what's going on. You know, the technology basis. You know, the cloaking devices, the weapons technologies. That's all valid theories. Again, hats off to the Anti-Trekker for doing that. But, you know, I would need to literally...
Yeah, you'd have to take into account all the time travel episodes. So
absolutely.
They're all going to create a tangent.
To create a tangent, right? Exactly. So that's, I think, the only way to really go back and then just see if there's anything that could have spawned off something else for what happens. But here's the other side of the coin is every time the Next Generation cast went back in time, they always came forward or back to their original point, and nothing's changed. Nothing's
changed, that's right.
So there's been just a few instances, like yesterday's Enterprise, for example.
Yeah.
When, you know, the Enterprise C comes through a wormhole, and instantly the whole universe changes around them until the Enterprise C goes back into the rift.
Yeah.
And then everything goes back to the way it was. But again, that alternate timeline put somebody in the past that didn't belong there. Yeah. And now it's affected the prime timeline. So why didn't that create a tangent?
Yeah. So if that's the case, if they wouldn't that now from that episode on forward, they should be in an alternate timeline.
That would stand to reason.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, this is more just conjecture and everything. Like, I haven't gone through and rewatched all of these episodes, but really, that's kind of what you got to do. There's more to this than like that. Just that everything that the Anti-Trekker has done is explains everything, the way the ships are, the way they look, cloaking technologies, all of that. It covers it completely. I applaud you for that. But there's more. There's got to be more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
So
my thoughts on the theory, it's a pretty sound, like I agree with you, it's a pretty sound theory. It's an interesting theory that there's 3 timelines.
Yeah.
And now the thing, let's get to the root cause of this. why he had to make this theory up in the first place. It's because of Enterprise and Discovery, the 2 prequel series.
Essentially, yes, that's exactly the reason.
And this is the problem with the prequel series. Whenever you do a prequel, for whatever reason, the people doing the prequel don't do their homework properly, and they just cannot help themselves but introduce things that we've already seen that creates contradictions. And that was one of the gripes I had with Enterprise, was right off the bat we've got Klingons right away. We've got Ferengi in there.
Yep.
Where it was already established in the Next Generation episode that Captain Picard was the very first guy to make contact with the Ferengi.
Exactly.
Now, I know they kind of whipped up some dumb excuse that the Enterprise crew was all incapacitated and didn't really see them, or there was some, I don't know, but to me, it was stupid. They shouldn't have even been in the show. There should have been no mention of Ferengi. They shouldn't have even had the Klingons show up until probably like the last season or something, or use them very sparingly.
Yeah, really the premise of Enterprise was this was the initial launching point of the Federation, so they only had 2 ships, the Columbia, the Enterprise, and maybe one other. I can't remember what the other one was, but the Columbia was crash landed onto another planet, exhumed later on, as I understand it. I don't have the entire backstory for the Columbia, but if they're just starting to break out, they first make contact with the Vulcans. That should have been their most introduction with any kind of alien life forms. Go to their biggest probably project, I guess, at the time would have been just to get to Vulcan.
Yeah,
some kind of a reasonable time with warp technology. But yeah, okay, they did break it down that they, the human race is curious and they want to see what's out there, and sometimes our heads are a little bit bigger than we give everything else credit for, right? So branching out and not knowing what's out there, and then finding out that there's far more advanced races and everything out there. But again, they're at the warp 5 technology. They're not getting around nearly as fast or as far out as later generations would be. So.
Yeah, and that's a problem with. That's always a problem with these. And same thing with Discovery. They really violate a lot of canon there. Even with the look of the Klingons, Discovery. Now we got to have an extra theory to explain why the Klingons look so different in Discovery.
Yeah, and they've changed so radically. Did you notice that from the very start of the first pilot episode?
Yeah, they did.
To about third episode. Mm-hmm. They started to drastically change them, and they started to slowly start to look more like the regular Klingons from Next Generation that we were kind of, everybody kind of responded to. But they looked
like a different race.
They did. I would have never. Their ships were completely non-Klingon. They didn't look like Klingon ships. They were colored like the race. Just wow, they were just awful. I would have never. There's nothing to, other than somebody saying they were Klingons. I would have never guessed in a million years that they were Klingon.
Yeah, and then this is the problem with doing another prequel series. It brings up these continuity problems. Now, if they had done it, there's no reason Discovery even had to be a prequel series.
Not really, no.
It could have been set after Next Generation, and you could have the same, and it would have made more sense because they could have had to introduce the spore drive, and then there's the reason why no one's ever heard of it, because it hadn't happened yet. Where now Discovery, they got this super advanced spore drive where they can go anywhere in the universe, basically, in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, and then, again, no explanation. They just had it. So that, like, it wasn't, they weren't, oh yeah, we're testing a new experimental drive, but where did they get it from? They just had it, just for no reason, and they were the only ship in Starfleet that had it.
And Starfleet didn't carry on this technology.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so now getting back to Andy Trekker's whole time theory thing there. It's like, it does do a good job of explaining all of this, but like, Star Trek was mismanaged so bad we shouldn't have to make up these theories. No,
that's very true. That's how else do you explain it? that's the real explanation for why this is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't be having to come up with these theories to try and figure out why or how all of these pieces are going to fit in the whole grand scape of Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's just poor writing.
And the showrunner for Discovery, Robert Orci, he came out and he said, well, you can't follow Trek canon. There's too much of it. You can't keep track of it. It's too hard. It's too hard.
Absolutely not correct.
You're gonna, to me, that's just an excuse. Well, they did 2 volumes of the Star Trek chronology. I got volume 1, volume 2, lays out the whole history. Here's when this happened at this date. Exactly. Here's when this happened. Bang, 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 all the way through.
Exactly. So all that is an excuse for them not doing their research.
Yeah, or they just don't care.
But that could also very well be the case. All they're wanting to do is just put something out, slap Star Trek on it, and just expect everybody to love it because it says Star Trek on it.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we were watching the video there, the second time around, his 3 timeline theory thing there, kind of made me think of there could be. It made me think there could be an explanation in the original series for the Mirror Universe, the time travel episode. You remember because you watched the episode with me, City on the Edge of Forever.
Yes, I did.
So they go back in time and they got to fix the timeline because Dr. McCoy goes back and he screws something up so the Federation doesn't exist. They can't get hold of the Enterprise.
Right.
So Kirk and Spock, they go through the Guardian or the Guardian of Time, the gate there, and they go back in time and they find out that Dr. McCoy had saved the life of Edith Keeler. And that's what completely changed the timeline.
Right.
So then the whole crutch of the episode is Kirk falls in love with her, but he has to let her die. Because if he lets her live, she delays the United States entry into the Second World War, and the Nazis develop nuclear weapons first and conquer the world.
Correct.
Now, what I was thinking of, what if that was the point the Mirror Universe was created?
Do you really want to branch this out into another alternate timeline? And this is what CBS should be doing. This is what, if anybody from CBS is listening, you guys should be taking people like Andy Trekker, who have a background with Star Trek, who love Star Trek, and start utilizing these people with their knowledge and get them to write proper stories.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, getting back to this Mirror Universe tangent, yes, I think that could be a good starting point for a Mirror Universe.
In that universe, they never that was the offshoot where McCoy succeeded, saved her, and changed everything, and then the Nazis took over, and that's how we get this Mirror Universe,
right? Because the Nazis ruled the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's been all kinds of different shows where they've had scenarios of, the Nazis won the war, and they, everywhere was a German Reich. Mm-hmm. So yes, that could absolutely be a good launching point for that. But do we really want to go down that rabbit hole and try and backtrack that to figure out where the Mirror Universe is? Yes, we know there's a Mirror Universe, but no, we don't have a timeline following the Mirror Universe.
No, we don't.
So, would that be an interesting Star Trek series? Maybe. I'm not going to say yes. I kind of just like seeing the Mirror Universe just kind of pop up in, sporadic spots where you don't expect to see them. I think that's kind of more the gimmick with it.
Yeah.
But
But this whole like alternate timeline thing that really kind of gets you thinking. And there's definitely, when you start to barrel down it, there's definitely going to be more than 3 timelines. Because already you have the mirror universe. So there's
going to be infinite amount of different variables to cause different tangents and timelines and way things develop and way things don't develop.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't. As me as a Star Trek fan, I don't need to see all of those.
No,
I only need to see them in just a 2-part special kind of thing. That's
yeah.
as far as we need to go. We don't need to start creating tangents like this is going on with Discovery and Enterprise, and First Contact, going back in time, creating this Kelvin timeline, blah blah blah, all this kind of good stuff, right? So, yeah, it's let's just get some writers, do your homework. If you don't love Star Trek, go do a different project. There's all kinds of you guys on YouTube that are, fan fiction guys that write their own stories, do their own episodes. Those are the guys you hire to do this stuff.
And they do a better job than the guys that actually have in charge.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. Like when they say, "Oh, we can't follow Trek canon. There's too much of it." Well, how come guys like the Anti-Trekker can, and guys like us can, and there's all kinds of guys that can?
Yeah.
So why can't you guys? That's your job. That's what you're paid to do, is to make a Star Trek.
Is exactly right.
Most of these guys don't get paid anything, and they can keep all this stuff straight.
Exactly right. So
I mean, how hard is it to do a timeline Bible? Here's the events. So if you're going to do a prequel series, then you know what happens, or just don't do a prequel series. If you can't follow canon, don't do a prequel series.
Exactly. If you want to come up with new stuff, you want to change things around, you want to make it look more advanced, and you're trying to put it before the most advanced show that's out there comes out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Now, yes, there are some guys out there that are just watching it just because they enjoy it, but some things sometimes some little tidbits like that don't bother them. But you know what? There's more people out there that it does bother than it doesn't.
Yeah, so I'm one of those.
In my opinion.
And I'm one of those. I know there's Star Trek fans that don't care about canon.
Absolutely.
They just like it regardless. They don't care about canon violations. But for me, it kind of takes me out of it. Like, because then it kind of breaks my suspension of disbelief, because then it's not... You know what I mean? Because then, it's...
Yeah, I know where you're going.
Especially when it's if it's minor ones that you kind of go unnoticed, it's not too bad. But when it's like big major ones, that really throws me out of it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. So, but it's let's just, when it comes down to it, what they're doing is just wrong. So I'm hoping that when Picard comes out, they've learned their lesson, get back on track with what is good, and continue on with that.
Yeah,
because this Discovery, and they cut off Enterprise early. It's obviously doesn't work. Most of this prequel stuff doesn't work. No. So,
like, you could probably do a prequel as like maybe a limited mini series, that then there's less of a chance that you could tramp on the history of other shows.
Well, yeah, I don't know if that's exactly
true. You know what I mean? Maybe if you could do it like that, I don't know. But for me, you're probably just best off just going and doing it.
Yep.
If you're not going to like take the time to actually, because for whatever reason they can't help themselves. Like, I'm surprised the Borg hasn't shown up in Discovery yet.
Don't start talking about the Borg. God, they're already in the future 900 years. They're already going to probably meet the Borg in there. Then they'll probably take some Borg technology back, and we're going to create another variant. So stop talking about that.
So, any final thoughts on this?
My final thought really is bravo to Anti-Trekker. You did a really good theory, and I think that's going to hold up for the time being, as long as future projects that come out are not going to be influencing what's what in your theory and what's happened to this point.
Yeah.
The only other thing I could think of is that all of this tangenty thing is going to come to a point where they're all just going to converge back, and then it's just going to make one prime universe again. that's my only hope that I could possibly think, that maybe that's what they're trying to do. But if they're trying to do that, this could take decades of writing to try and get it to flow back into a proper.
They should have just had Discovery take place in the Kelvin timeline.
Yeah, if
that would have probably solved some problems there, because it looks like it belongs in that timeline anyway.
It does. That's absolutely true, and they just keep saying it's canon, and I can't accept that.
No, so I mean,
for me, it's I can't accept it.
No, yeah, for me, I'm going to personally decide what's canon, what's not for me. I know whatever they say officially is canon, but for my own personal canon, I always think of Discovery as in some alternate timeline.
Yep, that's exactly what I would think. It's just some alternate offshoot of events that went a different way, maybe spawning all the way back to, Spock going back in time to try and save Romulus. Gets thrown back in time. That's the only thing I could expect it to really make a reference to.
So as for me, for final thoughts, this is actually a pretty fun fan theory. I think it was pretty, did a good job. It was entertaining to watch, and it's same thing. I wish the writers of the show put as much thought into their episodes as the Anti-Trekker does in the Star Trek. Absolutely. We wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Exactly.
So I guess we'll wrap it up right there. So that's everything we got to say in this video. We'll see you at the next one. Thank you to all of my subscribers, and thank you for watching this video. And if you're new to the channel, like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to hit the bell icon for notification when new videos are uploaded.